Welcome to Creating Calm Parenting with Mind, Body, and Spirit. I am your co-host, Corinne Cayce. I'm an integral leadership coach, a lifelong student of the Edgar Cayce readings, and a mother of two wonderful children. And I'm here with my friend and co-host, Arlene. Hi, Arlene.
Hi, Corinne. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Arlene Dijamco, an integrated physician, pediatrician, and cranial osteopath, and mom of four. And we have another great episode for you today. Our topic is on anger because we would like to continue to normalize talking about difficult things. And this is something that we don't talk about regularly, how to navigate anger. And this is so important for all of us in all of our relationships. So, in today's episode, we're going to actually integrate the Edgar Cayce readings with the work of psychologist Harriet Lerner, including some anger do's and don'ts. So, before we dive into that, Corinne is going to lead us through our opening meditation.
Yes. So let's just take a moment, as we do in every episode, to bring our attention inward. If you can, close your eyes. If not, just let your attention come into your body. Find your breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Take in the sounds that you hear, the smells that you smell, any taste in your mouth, the feeling of your clothes on your body, the places where the air touches your skin. And let yourself deepen into your senses, trusting your body. And now let's finish with just taking 3 deep breaths together. All right, thank you so much. So, as Arlene mentioned, we're going to be talking about anger today, both the Edgar Cayce readings and also the amazing work of Harriet Lerner, who we've talked about before on our podcast. To begin, I'd like to start with an excerpt from the readings and also an excerpt from Harriet Lerner's book, The Dance of Anger. So this reading excerpt is from 3416-1, and it says, "He that has no temper is very weak, but he that controls not his temper is much worse. That ye experience in thy activities at times. This is active patience. Don't think it, much less do it. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is." Now, so we want to start today by just normalizing and naturalizing our experience of anger. I think often, especially in spiritual practice, anger is seen as something bad, and we want to begin by just sort of neutralizing that feeling within ourselves and that idea within our minds. So to do that, we're beginning with an excerpt from Harriet Lerner's book. This comes from page 1, and these are literally the first words of her book, and they're so beautiful. And as I read them to myself regularly, I just feel myself exhale and relax. So hopefully will be similar for you as well. So Dr. Lerner says, "Anger is a signal and one worth listening to. Our anger may be a message that we are being hurt, that our rights are being violated, that our needs, our wants are not being adequately met, or simply that something is not right. Our anger may tell us that we are not addressing an important emotional issue in our lives, or that too much of ourself, our beliefs, values, desires, or ambitions is being compromised in a relationship. Our anger may be a signal that we are doing more and giving more than we can comfortably do or give. Our anger may warn us that others are doing too much for us at the expense of our competence and growth. Just as physical pain tells us to get our hand off the hot stove, the pain of our anger preserves the very integrity of ourselves." And that comes from Harriet Lerner's The Dance of Anger on page 1. So where we immediately want to move from normalizing our experience of anger is to recognizing, I think when the Edgar Cayce readings are talking about working with anger, they're sort of primary teaching or offering is don't let your anger become a stumbling block or a hindrance to your growth, to your ability to be happy, to feel joy, and to be of service. So we want to start recognizing what these stumbling blocks might feel like in our life and be able to talk about anger in the context of those stumbling blocks.
To help us recognize these stumbling blocks, we're going to read another excerpt from the Cayce readings, and this is from 2132-1. In Mars, we find anger and madness that has often aroused or brought great differences of opinions, and their expressions that have made for divisions among thy fellows, as well as in thy friendships and associations. It is well that anger and its ability for expression be existent, but woe indeed to those who allow same to become stumbling blocks and to cause hate, malice, and injustice to be dealt in any manner to their fellow men. For know indeed, as ye do unto the least of thy brethren, you do unto thy Maker. And you must meet thyself in the manner of the soul you present to the Maker. For you must, as all, stand before him and be judged according to the measure you have meted to thy fellow man.
Right. So there's a lot there in that excerpt. Thank you, Arlene, for reading it so beautifully. I think the essence of what stands out here for me is as we begin that everything when we're talking about the maker here and being judged, you know what that means to me is there's this energy, this creative force that's moving all the time, and we feel ourselves to be ourselves, the more in alignment we are with that creative, constructive, positive emotions that we feel in our lives. And we feel those in relationship to other people. So it's natural, and the reading says this so plainly, it is well that anger and its ability for expression be existent, right? It is okay and natural to feel anger. Where we start to feel ourselves in opposition or out of alignment to that creative energy or force that's moving through our lives is when it starts to become a stumbling block. And what does that mean? What is a stumbling block? We can start to feel that. We can feel stumbling blocks when we notice that we're feeling certain ways in our lives. And these ways don't feel good. It feels bad. And we might feel anxiety and stress and other things. But what's going on underneath that is maybe we're feeling a lot of judgment, right? We're feeling ourselves noticing and assessing other people's actions all the time. We might be using sarcasm. We might be suspicious. We might have a lot of prejudice or contention or feel criticism or deceit or loneliness, or we might feel like we're overbearing or overriding other people, and we might feel antagonistic a lot. So you can notice if you're feeling those feelings in your life, either inside yourself or you're getting that feedback coming from other people. It feels like you're being really, really judgmental. It feels like you're using a lot of sarcastic words. If you feel jealous all the time, then you might want to sink in and notice, like, where am I feeling anger in my life right now, and how can I make some shifts? So from turning blocks into stepping stones, we talk about a lot in the Edgar Cayce readings, right? So how can we help transform those negative emotions that we may be feeling in relationship to other people? Anger is a relational emotion, and how can we start to transform them? And that's what we want to start to talk about now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before we do that, it might be helpful to notice. So what I just named are a bunch of emotions that you might notice in your mind, you might feel in your heart that are happening. The readings talk also about how we might experience anger at a purely physical level, what might be happening at a physical body, at a physical level when we're experiencing a lot of anger. So some of the readings that talk about that, let's share a few excerpts, and then Arlene can talk about it from a neurobiological perspective. But from reading 281:24, this reading says, there is the physical body, there is the mental body, there is the soul body. They are one as the Trinity, yet these may find a manner of expression that is individual unto themselves. The body itself finds its own level in its own development. The mind, through anger, may make the body do that which is contrary to the better influences of same. It may make for a change in its environ, its surrounding, contrary to the laws of the environment or hereditary forces that are a portion of the élan vital of each manifested body, with the spirit or the soul of the individual. Then, through pressure upon some portion of the anatomical structure that would make for disengaging of the natural flow of the mental body through its physical in its relationships to the soul influence, one may be dispossessed of the mind. Thus ye may say rightly, he is out of his mind. Right. So, Arlene, maybe you can unpack this a bit for us from a physical perspective. What's
Oh, yeah.
happening?
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
When I hear that, like, he's out of his mind or dispossessed, that to me sounds like somebody is ungrounded. So your thoughts are electricity, and so when you are, thinking about what you're angry about and you can't get your mind off of it, or it's like it's taking over your body, and so all that electricity is going to go to the upper parts of your body and
Mhm.
make you feel more heady, but then you are not fully inhabiting your body, so that's the de depossess, meaning you're not fully conscious of all your whole body and how it's working. And this will place another term he's used was pressure through the different systems. So this is going to place pressure on the nervous system. This is going to place pressure on the endocrine system. And he has other readings saying the same. And what is happening is that your body is going to have a fight or flight response. This is a stress or a trauma pattern. And in this case with anger, it's focused on that fight. So you have all this adrenaline and cortisol coursing through you, but you also have tension in your body, tension in your nervous system. And that can, if it is not expressed in a constructive way, if it is directed like inwards, then it could create um, digestive issues, headaches, dizziness, aches or pains in the body, or a host of any other issues. In traditional Chinese medicine, we understand that liver is the organ of frustration, of anger, of rage. So it can be a spectrum of what anger represents. And so you could get liver issues or digestive issues, skin issues, allergies, and these might have be like more subtle manifestations of what anger is doing to your body. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that every person that has those things is angry, but to consider that are these signs of some hidden anger in your body? Because your body will help you. It will help you tuck away anger or emotions that you are overwhelmed with, that you don't feel that you're ready to deal with, or you don't want to process. You don't want to necessarily look at it directly or use it constructively. In order to do that, we have to be more conscious of it. And so your body will help you by helping you contain it, but it doesn't really contain it perfectly because it will start to manifest in the physical. And so this is how
Mhm.
like how our thoughts and emotions can affect our bodies. So we
Mhm.
have this tension, the brain and the autonomic nervous system start to be less integrated, and so that out of the mind, out of the body experience when anger just runs away from
Mhm.
itself. So,
Yeah.
and in the Cayce readings, he also says like the adrenals are um, also principally involved with anger, and it pours poisons into the body because your body is this manufactures its own chemicals, its own
Mhm.
neurotransmitters, and so if you're pushing all the pedals in a way that's that anger is driving it, then you're all the ratio and amounts of things that it's producing will go awry. Maybe you're holding on to toxins that you should be releasing. So maybe you have, again, more cortisol, adrenaline than is healthy for your body. So it becomes out of balance. And so um, if you might not consider yourself to be an angry person, and I don't necessarily mean to label anyone like that, but if you have any of these issues, to take a deep look inside yourself and see, are there any hidden aspects of anger? Because Harriet Lerner so beautifully describes this, and she says that there is no such thing as unexpressed anger, which I feel is really interesting um, eh, because it's not necessarily being expressed through the emotions, but it can get expressed through the body too. So that's another way that it's getting expressed. So it's contained, but not perfectly contained. And so she says the question is whether anger is expressed constructively or destructively. And when not expressed constructively, it doesn't just go away. And so this is what we're talking about in terms of like how the body might try to hide it for you, if that's what you're trying to do, maybe even subconsciously, maybe not consciously. And so I think about it like the big elephant in the room. So you could put a blanket over the elephant and you may not be able to see it clearly, but it's still there. And it'll
Mhm.
still be a big elephant in the room. And so this is when we have big emotions or and things that we're dealing with in our life, then if we don't look at it, it's still there. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's just not processed. And so we need to give it a safe outlet, safe way to process. Other ways that it could um, be used destructively, it could build up, like it's what Harriet Lane called the last straw is reacted to. So it's like building up until you have all this pressure and then it can explode. And then we can see that also physically where we maybe get a more serious illness, but it could also be exploding emotionally where you just explode at a person and they may or may not understand what you're actually angry about, because if it's been built up over time and it's that last thing, but there's so many things related to it, then that's the part where it's like it's always being expressed somehow. So whether through the um, body or through the explosive behavior. Another way that it might get expressed in a sneaky way, is that it can leak out indirectly through passive aggressive behavior. And Harriet Land describes something of motivated forgetting to be example of that. So remembering what we want to and forgetting what we want to forget. And so we all have done this in various ways in your life, whether we're late for something or we're procrastinating. And I've definitely done that through different times in my life as well. But other examples of passive aggressive behavior that are really common are making decisions by forgetting, or a backhanded compliment, sarcasm that Corinne mentioned before, or sulking, refusing to communicate. So shutting down in a way. And the point is to recognize these examples as possible ways that anger is leaking out indirectly. It's not meant to make anyone feel bad, but to really be reflective of yourself and see, is there any subconscious, unexpressed anger that I could take care of so that I could feel better? And this could come out also in terms of depression, because Harriet Lane describes major depression as anger expressed inwardly instead of outwardly. And I find that to be a very interesting way of looking at depression. And so this is also reflected in the Cayce readings. So there was a question in reading 288-27 of how can I ward against such periods of depression? And the answer was, a soft word turneth away from wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And so he was saying really to be gentle with yourself, and not so stern and angry with the self. So to use gentle words. that would turn away wrath, turn away anger. It would help to lift depression.
Yeah.
So, there's so much here, and,
Mhm.
I know that Harriet she also Lerner, she also went through these anger do's and don'ts, since we wanted to highlight some for you. So, Corinne, I thought that you could go through some of those for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. As I was listening to you describe those as sort of different ways that anger could leak out in destructive patterns, I can definitely see myself, in practicing all of these destructive ways of working with anger, and also in my children as well. And I think just sort of bringing this lens of looking at both letting the anger that we feel be okay. I think for myself, pushing it away. Oh, it's not okay to feel angry, or I need to let go of the small things, or this shouldn't really matter, or need to focus on the positive, or all of these sort of things that can serve us can get in the way of just allowing ourselves to acknowledge when we're feeling angry, and that it's okay. Not that any action needs to be taken, but just that we can care for that, and seeing when that the same thing may be happening in our children when we're experiencing sulking or sarcasm or extreme, judgment and harshness with ourselves, that there could be an internal voice going on connected to that depression leaking out of, I'm not good enough in some way, I'm doing a
Mhm,
bad job in this area of my life. That's the internal dialogue that's accompanying what can appear to be extremely, aggressive, angry external behavior that's happening. That there's an internal voice that's self-directed, that can be incredibly powerful, and to kind of, as parents or in any sort of familial relationship, tuning into that level of dialogue. And I know for my husband and I, when we've been in, sometimes when he will say to me that I'm being really critical, I'm coming at him in these strong ways, and when we're able to speak honestly, what
mhm,
he's saying is, I hear that voice within. I'm already talking to myself in that way. Like when I hear you saying the same thing back to me, it's like a megaphone yelling these things that already feel vulnerable to me. And just sort of unpacking our anger in this way can be such a powerful way to find a place of vulnerability in our own relationship to
mhm,
ourselves and to our children and our loved ones as well. So to help sort of facilitate that path of vulnerability that allows us to say very clean, the readings use that language a lot. And how can we be clean with ourselves, of not getting into the sort of messy dirt of sabotaging our own relationship to the pure way that we want to be relating to ourselves? Harriet Lerner offers powerful instructions to kind of help us ourselves feel like we're in right relationship with ourselves. And one of the first ones that I've sort of been dancing around a bit is just like recognizing when you're angry and letting
mhm,
it be okay. What's going on here is not, that doesn't have, is just me. I'm feeling angry right now, and finding a constructive way to express it is what I'm looking for right now. So there's this mindfulness awareness that's necessary to caring for our anger in our way, and helping our children do it too, which is, this is so such an under talked about area, I think, in teaching our children leadership, really,
mhm,
and how to care for themselves. So just recognizing, right, and uh, and knowing that we all experience anger, we all do, and it's okay. And then second, really be willing to speak up when
mhm,
an issue is important to you. Not, like my father always used to say to me, you don't have to sweat all the small things, right? It's not every single thing that we need to raise when something is wrong. But if you notice a pattern of not being okay with something, or if you find yourself profoundly shaken by it, where maybe you're swinging into a trauma place or something, just recognizing, I'm definitely going to say something about this.
mhm,
I don't need to let this go. But you don't need to stay silent either. And as you're finding your words, the next thing that Harriet Lerner offers for do is to really purify your motives. And this is Harriet Lerner's language. In the language of the Edgar Cayce readings, I think what we're looking for is what this means is to really touch into your ideal, to really connect to your why. what's going on here. And to add an excerpt from the readings here that comes from reading 254:52, it says, "Inexistent conditions, turmoils, and strife, even harsh words that stirreth up anger, are in the minds and hearts of many." So it's saying, and looking around here, we can see a lot of people are upset and angry. That's happening. And then it says, then in considering the conditions that are necessary for the proper way of procedure. So then, and this, what the readings mean by this, in my opinion, is as you consider how to move forward from here, the first thing it says to do is proceed slowly. Be not hasty either in word or deed, rather relying upon those presentations that may come from as perfect a meditation heart of each, with that figure that each would have as the ideal or the guiding star, the guiding factor in that as would be accomplished. So move slowly as you slow down. Check into what is motivating me right now. What are my motives? What are my values? Why am I feeling upset in the way that I am? And what is the outcome that I'm really looking for here that doesn't have to do with selfishness or ego? And to really watch yourself here and to not use what Harriet Lerner describes as below the belt tactics. And these would be some of the more negative or destructive qualities, relational emotions that I was naming before, where you're blaming, diagnosing, labeling, analyzing, preaching, moralizing, ordering, warning, interrogating, ridiculing, and lecturing, interpreting, and casting judgment on what it is that may be happening with another person or another group of people that doesn't take yourself into account, right? That's all sort of outward facing, where you're pointing a finger at someone else or other groups of people and not really willing to see yourself in that relationship as well, as as having feelings, as being a participant, as having your own view as to what may be going on that's not at all connected to what's happening to the other person or group of people. And and to add the readings into this encouragement to not use below the belt tactics as well. This comes from reading 452-3, and it says, "Faults in others are first reflected in self. When such conditions arise in the experience of an entity, there should first be those considerations of that in self that has produced such a reflection, so that the God shining through any activity is lost sight of by self in the fellow man, especially one that is seeking for the spiritual activities in a material plane, and he that would gain the world and loses self's own soul has lost all." So this is just really encouraging to you. It's encouraging you to see yourself in the relationship there. It's not saying, oh, this has everything to do with you and nothing to do with the other person, or the only thing here that's happening is what you're doing wrong. It's just saying, don't exclude yourself from being part of what's happening here, and being willing to see that that which, is really triggering to you in another person or in a situation also has a connection to you in the way that you may be thinking or acting or engaging. And so following right along with that is really try to appreciate the fact that people are different, that everyone has a different perspective that they're bringing to this. And I think we can bypass this one a little bit of like using some sort of mantra of, oh, we're all different, all valid. And I don't think we want to neutralize it at all, minimize it. We want to make this really real for ourselves by looking for the places that we get most angry or most activated, and being willing to engage in there of, just as attached as I am to my feelings about a certain situation, another person is equally attached to their ideas or feelings. And a beautiful way that the readings kind of invite us into that place comes from one example of it. It's pervasive in the readings everywhere, but from reading 1402-2, the reading says, "Until ye can see in each person ye meet, though in error he may be, his special worth, that ye would worship in thy Lord, or that which you cherish so much you can also see in another person, no matter how different they may be feeling from you. Until you can do that, ye have not even begun to find the meaning of brotherhood.
Mm.
So in that which is most difficult, really looking for how you can relate to that other person, the similarity that you can feel in yourself, in them as well. That's the starting place. Yeah.
That's so beautiful and relevant, and it's a timeless,
Yeah.
um, concept and advice, and along these lines, there's another don't. It's don't tell another what they think or feel or should think or feel,
Yeah.
and, and remembering that one person's right to be angry doesn't mean that the other person is to blame, and this is also from Harriet Lerner's work, and that's, I see that with the family, I see that with the kids, I see that with groups and organizations, is that, that as soon as one person is angry, then everyone that other people tend to be on the defense, or
Mhm.
whoever they feel it's directed at will tend to be on the defense, so it doesn't necessarily um, connote blame for anyone, but everyone has a right to feel how they feel, and they can feel angry, but not to interpret that as blame. I mean, that might come out with the anger, but to not make assumptions and to not put up that defense as well. There's another saying that putting up a defense is the first act of war, which is a very interesting concept as well. But that I feel is a fairly common way for people to react to someone else's anger is to put up a defense versus trying to everything that we've talked about so far is like trying to understand where is that person coming from, how are they
Mhm.
feeling that, why are they like that, and then to slow down and to be purposeful in terms of your response. So when I respond, do my words actions help or hurt? So am
Mhm.
I fighting fire with fire, or am I actually bringing gentleness to ward off the wrath?
Mhm.
So many things to think about from the small interactions in your day to
Right.
those little snippets that might happen to bigger, situations that you might be dealing with and that it's very common in our world right now.
Absolutely. And we're just brushing the surface with this topic today, but just to mention the sources that Arlene and I are using to inform this in case you want to go deeper since we're just at the surface here. As we've mentioned, we're using The Dance of Anger
Mhm.
by Harriet Lerner, her wonderful book there. We've also been leaning into the circulating files that are in the member section of the A.R.E.'s website on working with anger, working with human emotions, all of that, and also Jeffrey First's book, Edgar Cayce's Story of Attitudes and Emotions. So those are some primary sources that you can go to if you're wanting to deepen this study of how to work with anger in our lives and helping our families and children navigate through it. So I'm sure we'll return to different aspects of this conversation because I know we use it all the time in our lives and work Arlene and I both do. So thank you so much, Arlene, for getting started with this today. I always enjoy it so much.
Thank you, Corinne. I love our conversations, and thank you everyone for being here with us.